It's a real delight to have you here. Thank you so much for being here. You really honor us.
Well, thank you for having me. And thanks to the the university, the business school, Ann Hill, and all of your sponsors, your partners, the students for coming out early this morning. I've got to tell my corporate partnerships team about how many sponsors you have for an event like this, and tell them to get it going up there in Chicago.
Everybody wants to be a part of this. We're very delighted to have it. So I mentioned today the topic is financial strategy, community impact, and long-term growth. This is something that you live and work, and we're really interested to hear your views on many aspects of this. I'll ask about this shortly, but I want to start with something that I imagine is in the heads of many people in the room. It certainly was in mine as I was coming in this morning. And I'd love to know what it's like to work for the Cubs, for such a high-profile organization. So let me just give you a quick bit of context. For this speaker series, we have some amazing guests. We had the CEO of American Airlines in the fall. President Pullen was in the fall. We had Ms. Wendy Davidson, CEO of Hain. A lot of enthusiasm for that. I've never seen the enthusiasm that has happened when I was telling people that you'd be here. One of the members, I'll just say one of the members of the top table today, we won't name which one, but when I told them about it, their response was first, okay, I need a ticket. And the second was, I'm going to dress head to toe in Cubs gear for this. Now, they haven't followed through on that promise, but inside they're dressed as in the Cubs. You must get that all the time. What is it like to work for the Cubs?
It's amazing. And, I do have to say, TCU's been very, very hospitable and welcoming me here today. Did throw me off a little bit when I walked in, and the first guy I met was a guy that I had to watch beat the Cubs for about 15 years, and Matt Carpenter. And then you put him at our table. So, just you gotta make sure you keep everybody off kilter a little bit there. But working for the Cubs it's tremendous. And I think from my perspective, when you can marry up your passion with your profession, you're going to be more motivated, you're going to be driven, and you're going to have the opportunity to be very successful. And that's what I have been able to do in marrying up my passion for baseball, and in particular the Cubs, with where I go to work every day. It is an atypical, I would say, type of job. It certainly carries with it all of the day-to-day responsibilities of corporate finance and managing large credit facilities and managing stakeholders, board of directors, investors, partners, lenders, and all of those things. And then you layer on top of that the business that we're in, which is it's really entertainment. It's sports entertainment. And we have millions of fans, and those fans are passionate about our product, and our product is what we put on the field predominantly, and we strive to do everything we can behind the scenes to help some way make that product better and make the results better. And I always tell my team at the office, we're not doing something for the players, but we're probably doing something for somebody who's once removed from the players. So very microscopic example would be my payroll department. You can't screw up a player's payroll because you can't have a player be distracted and have their agent calling our president of baseball operations with that distraction, because that's going to distract them maybe in a small way from the job that they have to do on the field. So if you can try to instill in all of your associates, we may not be doing the hitting and the pitching and the catching, but we need to be trying to do something that makes that better. And that's a mantra that I think makes it exciting to be at the Cubs. But beyond that, the day-to-day schedule can be a little bit challenging. I probably attend about 55 of our home games every year. Wow. I spend a couple of weeks in spring training because I oversee our spring training business operations. And I really enjoy it. And last Friday was our opening day. And it's a great reminder of why you do what you do, especially after kind of a long winter, and it never gets old.
Yeah, that's a really good answer. I like that. I think there's a lot of envy in the room for the position, and you obviously work with that well. Can we talk about your own leadership style now? How do you think your background, your educational experiences have influenced your leadership style, your approach to the role that you have?
Two-part answer, I think. My leadership style I would describe as one of empowerment and then accountability to go with that empowerment. And it goes back to recruiting and recruiting for key positions in the organization. My vice president of information technology, my controller, my head of finance, my head of spring training operations, really looking for kind of impeccable resume, really good at their craft, really committed to it. But then I also, in my case, I do try to hire people that can balance me. I have a pretty good idea of what my strengths are. And through people like Will, I have a pretty good idea of what my weaknesses are. And I find that if I can supplement within those roles some of my weaknesses, then the entirety of the organization can be better. So with that, try to hire like that, and then empower people. They need to have the ability to make decisions, and they need to know that I'm behind them on those decisions, and that if they're making thoughtful decisions, and sometimes it doesn't go in the right direction, that's okay, and I'll be there. I'll be there to support them. I think your educational experiences inform the way you manage, the way you lead, the way you work, and I think I really got a lot out of Marquette University, and that being a faith-based education. And in addition to the business classes, we had a lot of philosophy and a little bit of theology mixed in there. And I think that helps you create the whole way of thinking as you learn and grow, particularly at that formative time in your life. And then my experience at Kellogg was through their evening program. So I went through and took my classes in the evening after work. And what I really drew from that was the incredible professors that we had. And you could take those things that you were learning at Kellogg on a Tuesday night, and you could take them back to the office on Wednesday. If I was in an entrepreneurship class and they were talking about compensation plan design or pick a topic, you could take that right back to the office and kind of try to meld those things in with what you're doing in the office. And a lot of those Kellogg classes were adjunct professors, so like you have many of here, and they had that kind of real world experience to blend with what you were doing in your day job.
Can I follow up on a part of that? Something I really admire about that answer is the humility, or what we might call the epistemological modesty, this idea that we can't know everything. Something in leadership, I mean, we see amazing leaders. You're clearly a world-class leader. You've just said to us there are things that you're good at and things that you're less good at, and part of maybe what you're good at is recognizing that second category and having others that can fulfill that. Are you comfortable talking with us about maybe one aspect that you feel is not a core strength of yours, but that you supplement through your team?
Absolutely. And by the way, your vocabulary is terrific. Could you say that again? Was that wow. This guy must have come from Notre Dame.
There's clearly a nerd deep inside that's trying to get out, as you can tell.
There are these like personality tests that you do from time to time in your career, and the name's escaping me right now, but time after time after time, it comes back that I generally have pretty good social skills. I'm generally a pretty good listener. I can capture the things that I hear and turn them into the next thing that we're going to do reasonably well. But on the flip side, I am not the most organized person in the world.
I feel
and that is that probably that goes probably back to a childhood of living in a house with 5 boys, and my mom was dealing with other things besides like having me make my bed and things like that. So I'm not a particularly well organized person. And when I went to hire my controller, who's now been with us for about 10 years, first, second, and third on the list was I need somebody who is incredibly well organized. It is so critical to the accounting function and the finance function in a business to have that skill set resident. So I think I kind of battled through that for the first 20 years or so of my career, and through hard work or desire or whatever, I supplemented that little bit of a weakness, in organizational skills. But it's worked out really, really well. And once I think you can cross that chasm and maybe have that level of comfort personally, professionally, to identify those things, and you get to a point in your life and you realize this might not get any better. I might not become the most organized person in the world. So let's just find the people that can supplement and build your team like that.
I really like that answer. That's something for us all to take away for sure. You've worked in multiple areas. You worked in healthcare. You're in the sports business now. Do you see, when you think about leadership, you think about fundamental business principles, what do you feel is pretty close to universal? What do you think applies in finance that would apply in operations, that applies in healthcare, that would apply in the sports business, that apply in the many other realms that we would send students to and that we have in industry?
I think from a financial perspective, this is probably going to be kind of a boring answer. I would say that from the chair that I sit in, balance sheet management, and really having your arms around balance sheet, and by that, for people that aren't finance professionals in the room, I really mean cash, and I mean liquidity and the availability and the ability to forecast that. One of my colleagues at work says there's one way that businesses get in trouble, and that's when they run short on cash. And public companies are publishing EPS. You can't necessarily spend EPS. EBITDA is a commonly thrown around word. You don't spend EBITDA, you spend cash. Right. So that's how I think about it. Went through a very trying time at the company I worked for before, which was called Solution. We were Hadley will appreciate this. We were breaking bank covenants, so the banks were getting real frustrated with us, and they brought in a workout group. A workout group is something I don't wish upon anybody, but it's when the bank tells you that they're going to have some consultants in, and those consultants are going to come in and they're going to help you. And basically they're coming in and they're watching every single dollar you spend. They're watching every single dollar that you bring in, and they are building complex models that go out to typically a quarter or so for you to really tighten the screws on what's going on with your cash flow. So that was a good experience for me on the back end of it. But again, I'd say cash is really critical.
We have a professor here, Mo Rodriguez, and he's universally known for his, I guess it's Mo's principle number one, Mo money good. So I don't know if Mo
I think I'd like
him. Yeah, that's all there is. That's the end of his class. It's a very short class, but it's impactful. So if we go to the reverse of that, so Ed, what's universal? Excuse me, I need a drink. We talked about what's universal. Are there things that you think are really distinctive, maybe even unique to the sports business that you don't really see as much in other places?
Yeah, I think that there's the thing I think is really unique to a sports business is irrespective of who owns that team, I think there's a real sense of ownership of teams by their fans, by all of their different stakeholders. And I think that we as employees of sports teams, and one of our core values is stewardship. And our objective, if you drill down on stewardship, is can we leave the Chicago Cubs organization better than we found it? And our owners have a long-term, multi-generational ownership horizon that enables us to make some decisions to really be thoughtful about that stewardship. And we do try to live it, and it's hard, and you fail, and you make mistakes. But I think that's somewhat unique about our business.
You must feel like you have a lot of bosses.
I have a phone full of texts about relief pitchers and hitters and defensive substitutions, and everybody's a GM. And that's fun because you want people to be passionate like that, and you can't just shut that down. You have to find a nice way to respond to some of those things.
All right. I'd like to move a little bit to the idea of community. You may have seen we have a new, really ambitious, exciting strategic plan, 10-year plan, 4 pillars, and one of those pillars is community engagement. So we're here in TCU, we're thinking a lot about this idea of community. What does it mean to be engaged in the community? How do we measure that? What is our community? These are questions that we are grappling with now, we'll continue to over a period of time. This is clearly something you think about. You're embedded in the Lakeview neighborhood. You've just been instrumental in the renovation of Wrigley Field. I think everybody sees the Cubs as being a strong citizen of its community. From your experience, what do you see as the key elements of successful community engagement for organizations? And do you have any advice for us as we embark on this journey?
Yeah, I think first of all, I think you're really thinking about it right, in that engaging the community is critically important. And I think the fact that you have so many of your own, TCU community folks here today says a lot about the strength of that infrastructure that you have, at least in the TCU part of that. I'll just share with you a little bit. So the Wrigley Field Restoration Project was one of our original strategic objectives when the family took over the team. And it follows from our mission statement, our mission being to win the World Series, to preserve and protect Wrigley Field for future generations of Cubs fans, and to be good neighbors. So those are the 3 tenets. So that restoration of Wrigley Field was going to involve that community involvement and being good neighbors. So we went out, and there's multiple. For those of you that don't know, Wrigley Field sits in a neighborhood. It's about a 7-acre ballpark, probably one of the smallest footprints of any ballpark in Major League Baseball. And literally right outside the walls of Wrigley Field, there's brownstones, there's single-family homes, there's multi-million-dollar single-family homes a block away. So we are literally, plopped down in a residential neighborhood. And the ballpark opened in 1914. And, when I arrived in 2010, the ballpark was aging, and we really needed to do a lot of work. So it wasn't going to happen without the support and the buy-in of our neighbors. So we have a full-time community affairs department. We have, literally a situation where the phrase "all politics are local" was invented, because if you own the bar across the street called Murphy's Bleachers and the Cubs are going to put a bar in over there, you don't want the Cubs to move forward with the renovation project, full stop. Now, Beth Murphy and her family have been partners and supporters of ours, so that's probably a bad example, but I think you get the idea.
Sure.
If you have anything, you have a stake in the neighborhood, and what we tried to instill is we're here to be partners. Yeah. And one of the first things that we did when we looked at the renovation of Wrigley Field is we made the decision to take a parcel of land immediately to the west of Wrigley Field. There was a parking lot. It was a small triangle-shaped piece of land. And we made the decision not to make that land something that was the best and highest economic use. Mm-hmm. We turned that land into a park. And the park is called Gallagher Way. It sits immediately to the west of Wrigley Field, and it serves as a gathering place for the neighbors in the community when there's not baseball games at Wrigley Field. And we do farmers markets, and we do art fairs, and we do small concerts, and we do movies in the park. And in the summer, if I look out my window from my office, there'll be 400 kids down there on a Thursday morning watching a movie on our screen. So make that investment, and it will pay us back. We got pushback on on a lot of the things, but I think once it started to come to fruition, the neighbors started to buy in, and we've it's not perfect. Also, the political climate in Chicago is challenging to deal with, so we had a lot of navigating to do with that as well.
Yeah, I like the idea of a park. We're doing a lot of renovation, a lot of building ourselves around here.
Yeah, but I think if you can really, you got to bring people under the tent, and you have to do it at the right time. And by bringing people under the tent, that doesn't mean that you're going to do what those people ask you to do. You are going to hear them, and you're going to work with them. And they've been your neighbors for a long time, and they're going to be your neighbors, for a long time going forward. We make other investments. We shovel the sidewalks probably 6 blocks in each direction from Wrigley Field in the winter. We have traffic safety aids after the games that go 2.5 miles from the ballpark to get the traffic out of the neighborhood. So we try to do everything we can, appreciating it can be an inconvenience.
Right. Yeah, I think we'll start with some garages, and we'll go from there. Do you, and you know TCU now, Will is here. You said to me before, this is your 4th visit. When we were chatting before, you were talking about, I like the way you described it, how it's a little hard to see where the edge of campus is. And some of that is cognitive and some of that is physical, and we're sort of bleeding into our surrounds. Do you have any thoughts or any advice for us? While you're here, we should take advantage of your brain. How should we be thinking about that boundary around TCU and how to meld that more effectively with the local businesses?
I think the first thing that comes to mind is if there's available real estate that could be strategic in the future, I would make that part of the long-term strategic plan to acquire the real estate, because much like we did with the rooftops, if you can control your perimeter a little bit from an ownership perspective, you can make more of the decisions. The second thing is, I think a little bit about the branding and the ability for the businesses that are adjacent, or the families that are adjacent, or the schools that are adjacent. Think about programmatically how you want to allow them or not allow them to use TCU marks, TCU branding to support their business. I don't pretend to know all the nuances of that. The Cubs logo is very valuable. We hold that close. We view that as a piece of our intellectual property. I don't know if you think the same about TCU, but I think it's really cool when I come down here, and I to your point, I can drive a little bit in each direction, and I don't know exactly where the boundary of campus is, and it gave me a great sense that this community of Fort Worth was supportive of the university. And as a parent, that gives me a ton of comfort knowing that my son is down here and that the community supports the university and vice versa. So it's kind of it's never going to go on your balance sheet what that does for your brand, but I think that's a little bit of how it hit me. And I didn't think about it from a business perspective. I thought about it, as a parent and a small stakeholder in what's going on here at TCU.
It's a really good answer. I think that'll help us a lot as we grapple with this issue of community engagement over the years to come. I'd like to talk briefly about data analysis, data analytics. This has become a really important topic in professional sports. What's interesting, a lot of that started in baseball with Bill James and sabermetrics and Moneyball. This is now clearly relevant on the field, off the field. How's your organization integrated data analysis, data analytics solutions into things like financial forecasting, decision making in all areas, and especially player acquisitions, contract negotiations? How do you integrate data analytics in your organization?
So I will just touch briefly on the baseball side, and I'll give you a business example, because I don't pretend to be an expert on the baseball side. And despite my efforts, Jed has never allowed me to select a player.
Not yet, not till today.
But our baseball guys, that has really evolved dramatically over the last 15 or 20 years, and the ability to financially value the future production of a Major League Baseball player has gotten really sophisticated. And I think across the industry, the variance in that has gotten much tighter. So I think you're seeing more transactions that happen with players where they're equal value transaction going in both directions, or at least equal projected value going back and forth in both directions. Whereas even, as recently as a trade in 2014 that Matt and I were talking about before the meeting here, it proved to be an unbelievable imbalance of production in that situation. I think you don't see that as much. So there's an arms race for advancement in the technology, in the sports science and everything. But that arms race, it converges very quickly across the entire industry. So those advantages are pretty brief. Torpedo bat, conversations have started across the league in the last week, and that's shifting the weight, I think, to the barrel of the bat a little bit so that the ball goes further and travels better. It came out with the Yankees last week. I can tell you that will be across the league, and if it's not across the league already, it'll be in the next 3 to 6 months. Every Major League ball player will have access to a torpedo bat or a torpedo bat lookalike. So you want to stay ahead, and that advantage that somebody can create could be enough for them to win this year. So it's still worthwhile chasing some of those advantages. On the business side, the most stark example I can give you is buying a baseball ticket, at least for the Chicago Cubs, has turned into an exercise that looks a little bit like booking an airline ticket. If you book it early and you get it at the right time, you're going to get a reasonable value for it. If it's July 19th, 20th, and 21st, it's going to be sunny in Chicago, and the Cubs are in first place, and the Cardinals are coming to town, and you decide to buy that ticket on July 15th, you are going to pay for that ticket. And what's happened is that used to be all secondary market. You would sell the tickets to a season ticket holder or to somebody on the original market from the Cubs, and they would take the arbitrage between that original list price and what the ticket sold for. The teams all have way more sophisticated ticketing groups that are doing dynamic pricing on a day-by-day, hour-by-hour basis, based on opponent, based on weather, based on a lot of things, that just has made that so much more efficient. For us and for the industry, it's really grown the industry's revenue pretty significantly because that money goes into the team to invest as opposed to brokers and things like that.
I think while we're on analytics, maybe I can briefly ask you your view of the Luka trade that occurred. It's a little bit of sensitivity in the room about that.
I'm not in tune with the NBA trading. So.
Okay. Some people think that neither were the Mavericks, but yeah.
Wow. Who would have thought the Dallas Mavericks would be catching strays on a Monday morning at TCU?
From an Australian business school dean who doesn't know anything. Yeah. I won't poke the bear anymore there. We'll move to a couple of questions from the audience in a sec, but I'd like to give you the opportunity to give us any advice that you have for our students. One of the things that we're really proud of is that we always have a number of students for these events. We have undergrad students, we've got graduate students, and we always hope that they can take away some insights from our senior guests. What would you say to our students? What advice do you have for them?
Quick show of hands. How many in here are students? Raise your hand for students. So you are ahead of the game. You showed up. So first rule: show up. And I think that you guys have been through, as students, you've been through a tough time in the last 6 or 8 years of education, going through a couple of years of COVID schooling and things like that. And what I think is going to separate people going forward into the future are interpersonal skills. And I think that the technical skills will be table stakes. You're going to need to have the technical skills to continue to be able to be competitive and to be employed. But those interpersonal interaction skills are critically important. I've been really impressed with every single TCU student that I've met and their ability to shake hands, look people in the eye, have a conversation, have a couple of things to talk about. That is the beginning of, developing your network. So don't sell those things short, and practice it. Practice talking to people and practice making those phone calls. The other thing I'll say is, developing your network is important, informally and formally. I think it's really cool when students occasionally will reach out to me and I can take 15 minutes in my car on the way home and have a conversation with students, just who are thinking about what they want to do in their career or thinking about what they want. You should try to make those connections. Now, I don't need everybody to make the connection with me, but you should try to make some of those connections and have those conversations. You can even have those conversations if your parents are having people over for dinner and you're curious about what somebody does. Like people like me, they love talking about themselves and what they've done. So you're not going to have a lot of unwilling participants as you go through those things. The other thing I'll say is I think it's really important as an 18, 19, 20-year-old, if you want to do some networking, it's great to do networking with people in senior level positions at places in corporate America. But if you can find that sweet spot of somebody that's been out of school maybe 5 to 10 years, that is almost always going to be more relevant to you in what you're doing today than talking to me. I'm happy to do it, but I think as I try to think about people like, hey, who can I talk to? I like them to talk to some of the younger people in the office if they're just starting their career, as opposed to always talking to, this is the end result for good or bad. This is a 32, 33-year career right here. And you're just starting out. And can I keep talking? Can I say a couple more things?
Please.
I didn't realize I had so much advice. I'll just keep it brief. Your success in life, in your career, in anything you do is not linear. It's not going to be a straight line. There's going to be ups and downs. And so, guys, give yourself a little grace. Like if you stumble, if things don't work out perfect, just give yourself a break. I mean, don't take it all so seriously. And then the last thing I'll say is success isn't finite. Like there's plenty of success to go around. So keep at it, and you're off to. You made a great decision to be at TCU and to be part of Neeley, and it's terrific.
Some great advice. I love the idea of focusing on the 5 to 10 years. I particularly liked what you were saying about the linearity. There's a question here which I was going to ask first, but I definitely will now. Was your path to the Chicago Cubs linear?
That's a good question.
Yeah, I thought I liked that.
So it was in many respects. I think from a professional experience and development perspective, it was just a quick. People will ask, how did you get the job at the Chicago Cubs? So the Cubs were for sale. If you go back 30 years, I was at Price Waterhouse. I was on the audit staff. We would do the audit of Tribune Company every year. When we get done with the audit of Tribune Company, they had a wholly owned subsidiary, the Chicago Cubs. We'd go out to Wrigley Field for a couple weeks, and we would do the audit at Wrigley Field. And I was blessed enough at Price Waterhouse to be on that job for about 3 weeks a year for 3 years or so, and made friends with the woman who was the assistant controller. And then I moved on in my career to do a whole bunch of other things. I'd call Jody once in a while for tickets and whatnot. So the Cubs are going to be sold in a process that was very public in 2008, 2009. Tribune had sold to Sam Zell, who was a real estate guy. Sam was divesting the real estate assets and kind of piecing this off. And there was about 4 groups involved in bidding on the Chicago Cubs. One of them, Mark Cuban, was in one of the groups. And there was another group led by a guy named Andy McKenna in Chicago, and then the Ricketts family and one other gentleman. And I was watching it closely. We had sold our business to Thomson Reuters. I wasn't thrilled with my job at Thomson Reuters. I was thinking about, in the back of my mind, the Chicago Cubs. And we lived in the neighborhood. We lived about a half mile west of Wrigley Field. We had a babysitter for Will and his brother, Maddie. And Maddie's grandpa was part of one of the groups that was going to buy the Cubs. So I had it all figured out. I said, well, when this group gets the Cubs, I'm going to slip my resume to Maddie. She's going to give it to her grandpa, and away we go. Not so fast. So the Ricketts family buys the team in October of 2009. November of 2009, I'm sitting at my desk, and one of the analysts that was working for me forwards me an email. And in that email is a link to a job posting on Career Builder. I don't even know if Career Builder exists anymore. But the job posting is for the CFO of the Chicago Cubs. They just posted it online. And the headline of his email is like, this would be perfect for you. So I pick up the phone, I dial 773-404-Cubs, and I asked to talk to Jody. And so she calls me back, and we talk for about an hour. And we had maintained a friendship over, off and on over the 15 years since I had worked with her a little bit. She asked a lot about what I had done. I asked a lot about why she wasn't going to be the CFO of the Cubs. And through this conversation, she convinced me that it wasn't right for her, and also I convinced her that maybe it would be right for me, and she agreed to put my resume in the pile. And my resume went in the pile. I got a phone call, and I started to go out to Wrigley Field for interviews with literally the folks at the Cubs and my wife, Nicole, and I being the only people that really knew about this. I'd go out for an interview. I'd meet with the chief operating officer and the head of HR. I'd go home. My wife would say, how'd it go? I'd say, well, it was terrific, but the Ricketts family have this wildly successful Ameritrade, and they have to have somebody for the job. So this went on for 4 months. And I'm like, well, I'm the stalking horse here. I'm the last man standing. And as it turned out, I went and sat down with Tom Ricketts in February of 2010 and met with one other person. And Tom and I spent 45 minutes just getting to know each other and really talking about baseball. And I was fortunate enough to get the phone call that I was going to be the CFO of the Cubs.
That's great. What a story.
Unlikely to happen again like that.
Maybe the students don't take away all of that advice. Maybe
it's a networking story.
It's a networking story. That should definitely take that away. I wonder how many
your
applications.
Networking is not best with your babysitter. It's better with people that you've actually worked with.
The babysitter gambit is always one that you should try. Did you grow up a Cubs fan?
I did.
Who was your favorite player?
My favorite player growing up was probably Ryne Sandberg. Ryan's in the Hall of Fame now, terrific player. But I grew up in a small town in Wisconsin, and at the time, WGN-TV was a superstation, so it was broadcast in 76 million homes across the country. And my folks were originally from Chicago, but we got that signal in Wisconsin. So you'll find right now there's a lot of people kind of around my age who are Cubs fans, and there's also a big group of Atlanta Braves fans because WTBS was also a superstation at the time. So that reach really helped with a couple generations of fans for us.
Nice. We have time for one or two more. I really liked this question. I guess we all wonder about this sometimes when we think about the finances and looking behind the curtain. How important is winning to the actual bottom line for the Cubs?
Winning helps.
It's probably not a surprise.
It's hard to catch. It's hard to catch it all in the moment from a revenue generating perspective because by the time you win, it's the end of the season. So really, you see derivatives in terms of season ticket holder renewal rate and maybe a little bit of pricing power as you go forward. And season tickets make up about half the tickets you sell. So if you can have the season ticket holders come back the more they come back, the statistics and the data show the more they're going to come back. Somebody that's been a season ticket holder for 1 year is way less likely to renew their tickets than somebody that's been a season ticket holder for 10 or 15 years. So, yeah, it's good. It's good for the brand. It's good for the fans, and you do see the result of it. In our case, after we had a really good 2015 team that propelled us in 16. In 16, we were fortunate, to break the curse, and that kept us going in 17.
Okay. So one last thing related to revenue. There's a question about what's the biggest contributor to revenue, and how do you think about the different revenue sources for the Cubs?
Yeah, in our case, it's the game day revenue, predominantly the ticket revenue is number one. I still believe in media, and we're in a good spot in our with our regional sports network, and as most of you know, not all are in a good spot. I still believe in media, and I think there's a little bit of a crisis right now across the league. You'll see, gosh, I don't know, probably 15 teams are without a media partner, and it's very, very challenging. And I think at some point, people way above my pay grade, they probably need to put the media rights together in more of a fashion that you see in some of the other major sports leagues.
Reminds me a little of an article maybe some people saw in the New York Times yesterday about Major League Baseball generally. I think there were a few different points in this. One of it related to the lack of a salary cap. The last time there was some discussion about that, I think, what was it, in the 90s, and there was a big lockout and caused lots of challenges. If you look at Major League Baseball compared to the NFL, certainly there's differences in how that's approached. Do you have thoughts on that? Do you think that is a good thing for MLB, a bad thing, somewhere in between?
I do. I mean, there's a salary cap and floor system that exists in the other major sports leagues in the United States, and there's modifications of these types of things. I think you can't forget, and the players have to get paid. And I think that you need to create a structure where there's the same money, very similar money is what's getting paid to the players today in an uncapped system, going to the players in a system that has a cap and a floor. And I think that could be distributed then to the players differently over the arc of their career. Right now, there's a very team-favorable system that allows the teams to have control of the players for their first 5 or 6 years in a cost-controlled manner. And then free agency begins, and then it's an open market, as it should be. There's disparity in where you produce your wins in the league that has shifted back into that first 6 years to in some respects, so that you're paying guys after their peak production cycle. So I think if there was a system that could kind of retool that a little bit, and yet ensure that the players are still players receive about half the money that the league generates, and that's worked fine. That's really fair, and I think it's complicated when you get into labor. And maybe you can have Matt next time, and he can talk he can talk about the labor piece of it. But no, I think where it's become an issue is there are teams that are spending maybe 6 or 7 times what the lowest payroll team is spending, and that just gets to be really tough to look at your fans in those small markets and say, we are going to compete with the spending of the New York Mets, the Los Angeles Dodgers, the Philadelphia Phillies, the Chicago Cubs. I mean, it's tough. And I would like to see a system that would enable, for example, the Kansas City Royals to keep Bobby Witt Jr. for his entire career. I think it would be cool, when I was a kid, George Brett was a Royal, and I think George only played for the Kansas City Royals. Robin Yount was a Milwaukee Brewer. And I just think that there's an ability for a community to attach to players like that and players to attach to a community in a really cool way that we just don't see today. And I don't know if what I just talked about is going to fix that, but I think it would go a long way if there was a floor on the other end of it.
Yeah, it's really nicely said. We're almost at time, so I wanted to see if there are any final thoughts or anything you wanted to share with our audience that we haven't covered yet.
No, I just think that, if I could say it again, you should all be really proud of this TCU community.
Go Frogs.
Oh, yeah. So
peace sign, angry. Peace sign, angry.
It's a special place that you guys have all built. And I think for those of you that are here as students, don't forget that when you leave, and always, hopefully this is going to be the best 4 years of your life, and you'll attach to that. And we have many people in the room who are either alumni or they're not alumni, but they've seen kind of some of the TCU magic, and they've grown very fond of it. So I think it's special, and it's always fun to have that special place in your heart, the way that I do for Marquette University, to see this team have it for TCU. So it's great.
That was a beautiful way to finish. Thank you very much. And on behalf of everybody here and all of the TCU community, I want to thank you sincerely for being here. You really honor us with your presence, and I thought that was a wonderful conversation. We learned a lot about you, your leadership style. I want to learn more about the history of the Cubs now after this, and I think you've given us all a lot of advice and a lot of insight and a lot of inspiration. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Please join with me in
You're
thanking
welcome.
Mr. Greifenkamp.